Why are you trying to put a cell phone tower in my kid's playground? There's like 1,000 other places you can put a cell phone tower.
This is ground zero for the best possible opportunity to create. I understand, but the point I'm making is this. You're asking why I can't go somewhere else, right? You're asking why can't I go like a mile away or 2 miles away? The answer is this is the best place to fill the hole in the network. You're asking, why can't I go like a mile away or 2 miles away? The answer is this is the best place to fill the hole in the network.
Really? There's really everywhere else in Shadyside. You're trying to tell me everywhere else in Shadyside you can't get more than 200 feet from a building or somebody's property line or whatever. That's what you're trying to tell me?
What I'm saying.
And will you be guaranteed? Will we be guaranteed that the school is the cell tower is safe for us kids? And we won't get some sort of cancer or anything like that. Because I don't want cancer.
Can I ask what grade you're in?
What?
What grade are you in?
5th.
You're in 5th grade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Going into 5th.
When my son was 9 years old, in the 3rd grade, he was diagnosed with leukemia. He went to a school where there was a cell tower within 300 or 400 feet from his elementary school, his Forest Hill Elementary School in Fairfax County. So if there's anyone who can understand your concern, it's me. Because I'm a parent of a child who had cancer and survived cancer. And I can tell you that there is no credible evidence to demonstrate that my son got cancer from that cell tower. That there is no credible evidence to demonstrate that my son got cancer from that cell tower. Because the reality is that there's no evidence to show that causes harm. And I wouldn't be the babies that would cause harm.
We know people are already getting sick from the lower frequencies, and we expect, that is our scientists expect, that these higher, ultra-high frequency microwaves are going to bring people to disease quicker and in a more intense form. The other problem with 5G technology is these microwaves are very short. So our old microwaves were about 2.5 to 3 feet long. These are now about 1 inch to ½ an inch long. And they don't travel very well. So they're going to have to put a little cell tower transmitter in front of about every 2 to 10 homes. Now this is a big problem because we know that cancer rates around regular cell towers are about 3 or 4 times what they normally should be. We also know that there's neurological symptoms that increase as you get closer and closer to a cell tower. Now these new transmitters are going to be placed close to people's homes. It's going to be continuous exposure as with other cell towers, but it'll be emitting a much more higher frequency, high intensity wireless radiation.
If you've seen the last episode of Cold Noir, you will have seen that we've included a lot of patents. I specifically stopped short of including this patent because after reading through it pretty thoroughly, I decided that this needed its own video. We're surrounded by so much technology, and it has become so integrated into our lives that I don't think people even realize some of what these things can do. I honestly don't think at this point that we are taught traditionally almost anything about how the world actually works. They churn everybody out in public schools to walk around just blind to everything. Just a mindless consumer, no critical thought, just sitting in front of your television, being programmed. That's why they call it programming. This is one of the creepiest patents I've ever read. And it's a real this is the thing. This is, I mean, you watch sci-fi shows and horror movies, and oh, that's scary for 2 hours, but you read something like this, and then you just start thinking about how everything really works. I mean, we've not been told. We haven't been told how we work, okay? Let alone how everything else does. And then you come to something like this. So, I have had this patent in a folder printed off for a while. I've been meaning to talk about it. And then I saw recently Richie from Boston covered this actually, and I was like, wow, that's kind of rare that he got this sent to him too. Good. I hope more people are talking about things like this. This is the kind of stuff that's actually going on in the reality that we're all sharing. This is United States patent number 6,506,148B2, dated January 14th, 2003. And this is the 10th in a series of patents by this particular man, all about manipulation of your nervous system, and in some ways remote manipulation, subliminal manipulation, and he ended with this one here, nervous system manipulation by electromagnetic fields from monitors. And I just wanted to go over this with you because this is a thing that exists, and it existed over a decade ago, well before they made the forced switch to digital, where they can layer the signals, and if there is anything strange in that, you're not going to see the interference, right? This has to do with physiological effects that have been observed in human subjects in response to stimulation of the skin with weak electromagnetic fields pulsed with certain frequencies near half a hertz or 2.4 hertz, such as to excite a sensory resonance. Many computer monitors and TV tubes, when displaying pulsed images, emit pulsed electromagnetic fields of sufficient amplitudes to cause such excitation. It is therefore possible to manipulate the nervous system of a subject by pulsing images displayed on a nearby computer monitor or TV set. For the latter, the image pulsing may be embedded in a program material or overlaid by modulating a video stream, either as an RF signal or video signal. The image displayed on a computer monitor may be pulsed effectively by a simple computer program. For certain monitors, pulsed electromagnetic fields capable of exciting sensory resonances in nearby subjects may be generated even as the displayed images are pulsed with subliminal intensity. In other words, you don't even know they're doing it. And then he has all these lovely drawings to go with this, which are just great. Actually, I have a favorite. It's this one right here. Remote computer, internet, her computer, her monitor, her. You see that? They can do this remotely and you don't even know that it's being done to you. And there's the kids. Gotta have the kids in there. Anyway, he goes on to say that the electric field in studies by Norbert Wiener, that would be the father of cybernetics back during World War II and the Cold War, was arranged to provide a direct electrical driving of the brain. That's what this kind of stuff is based on. And he goes on to say that it's been found that indeed physiological effects can be induced in the manner by very weak electric fields if they're pulsed with a frequency near half a hertz. The observed effects, which is just the ones they had for this particular patent, include ptosis of the eyelids, which means your eyelids close and flutter, relaxation, drowsiness, the feeling of pressure at a centered spot on the lower edge of your brow, seeing moving patterns of dark purple and greenish yellow when your eyes are closed, a tonic smile, a tense feeling in your stomach, sudden loose stool, and sexual excitement, all depending upon the precise frequency used and the skin area to which this field is applied. So, you ever watch a movie and you're not really feeling it all that much? Let's say it's a romantic movie and you're not really feeling it, and something happens and the two characters are swooning and they play that swell of music, and even though you're not really feeling it and you kind of think the movie's lame, you still get emotional and you start crying. Or like when people used to cry at long distance commercials back when we had long distance commercials. I don't know, I'm probably dating myself now and how old I am when I say stuff like that, but the point is, we've all had moments in watching movies or different things where your emotions don't match how you really feel based on the film, and you could just say that's creative filmmaking. But when you see something like this, you gotta wonder, is it also something like this? Because they can do this. And he's saying right here they have the ability to. And if you read at the first page again, this patent is based on years worth of other patents. So it isn't like he just came up with this off the spot. He's got 10 of his own patents based on doing this kind of stuff. Then he goes on to say in the summary that the implementation of the invention is adapted to the source of video stream that drives the monitor, be it a computer program, a TV broadcast, a videotape, or a DVD. And a program written in Visual Basic is particularly suitable for use on computers that run Windows 95 or 98. That's how basic this technology is. Okay? It does not take much. They could use Visual Basic to run it on Windows 95. Okay? So, and this is all those years ago. I have no idea what they have today. And it is to the point that at the end of his own patent, in the summary, this man, Hendrikus Lewes, says, certain monitors can emit electromagnetic field pulses that excite a sensory resonance in a nearby subject through image pulses that are so weak as to be subliminal. This is unfortunate since it opens a way for mischievous application of the invention whereby people are exposed unknowingly to manipulation of their nervous systems for someone else's purposes. Such application would be unethical and is of course not advocated. It is mentioned here in order to alert the public to the possibility of covert abuse that may occur while being online, while watching TV, a video, or a DVD. I've read a lot of patents actually in my day, and I've never seen somebody warn in their own patent of the covert misuse of something the way that guy just did in his own patent. What makes it even more disconcerting is when you look up information about this, and other people have looked up because they've seen all these patents and they went, what the hell? And if you go look at his history, it becomes much more disconcerting that he's coming up with these things. It wasn't like he just thought of this by himself and randomly came up with it. This is a guy who during the 50s was working with Plasmodine Corporation and then Douglas Aircraft's Advanced Research Department. Douglas Aircraft, of course, linked to Lawrence Rockefeller, lots of black Cold War projects going on with them. Then he went on in the 80s and started working on government projects as a contractor with the likes of the Department of Defense, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. So that's Hendrikus Lewes, and they go on to say in this article that he had a website called qwave.com, but it's nothing more of a copy of a site. But I actually went back to the Wayback Machine and found the old website that this guy started. And after reading through Are You Sensitive to Electric Fields and the Q&A that he has here, I feel like the guy almost has remorse for what he's created, or he figured out through this series of patents that he put out over the 90s and the early 2000s that he was coming up with something that wasn't actually very good. And so he wanted to warn people about it. And that's kind of what I get, the sense I get from this website of his that he had up at the time. This is no longer a current website, but back in the day he had this, and he said that depending on these frequencies, relaxation, drowsiness, sexual arousal, he knew he could cause all these things with this program. And he says that electric field pulses capable of exciting a sensory resonance can be generated by small insulated electrodes packed flat in the space of a credit card. So it doesn't take much for this. This can be just put right into the television monitor. It can be put right into your VCR, your VHS tapes. I mean, computer programs, anything. Computer monitors, whatever, right? Since we cannot sense the field directly, our nervous system can thereby be manipulated covertly for someone else's purposes. And then he was selling for rather cheap, $14 at the time, a program that you could buy and put onto your computer, and then you could test it on yourself to see how susceptible you are to this. And that's what his whole website is about. And then under the Q&A section, he's got all of his other patents. And like I said, you have everything here. Subliminal acoustic manipulation of your nervous system, manipulation of nervous systems by electric fields, magnetic excitation, pulsative manipulation. I mean, he's got it all right here. These are his 10 patents. And it ended with this one on monitors. And then he made this website. And the whole thing is just replete with him feeling, I think, pretty badly about what he did. You have to understand, all of these science projects, right? The government has these contractors and they make things and they're very compartmentalized, and I don't think people a lot of times realize, Not all the time. Some people are just horrible people and they're just in things for bad means. But I think some people actually genuinely think, I'm an engineer, I'm a scientist, I'm doing good things. And they don't even have the foresight to realize what their stuff could be used for and that it could be used against the general public. That's what this patent is, and that's just one. There are a lot of others I'd like to go through. I have a whole thing of patents that I've printed off. I just have never had a chance to get to them all. But this particular one, it blows my mind because people just have no idea. We're walking around bathed in so much electromagnetic radiation right now, background. Human beings have never been exposed to the level that humanity is currently being exposed to in our modern technological age. And we're carrying cell phones in our pockets, we're sitting in front of our computer monitors, we're sitting in front of our television sets, and people just don't have any idea the myriad uses that these things can be put to, all the stuff it can do. People are just blissfully ignorant. They don't know. And I personally don't want to go through life blissfully ignorant. I'd like to be informed. I mean, when I think of this, it reminds me of Videodrome. If you haven't seen the movie Videodrome, it's a very weird, creepy, violent movie, but they said in that movie the battle for the minds of North America would be fought in the Videodrome, and it was about programming that was turning people violent and crazy. And I mean, he mentioned some of the things that weak electromagnetic fields can do at certain pulsed frequencies, but that was not an exhaustive list of everything that they can do. And I bet it's a lot more than just making people cry at sappy movies. All right? So I just thought you guys should be aware of that. You always get people...
Polly Boyko reporting to us there from the Thames. So what's the next big thing, by the way? It's called 5G. Have you heard of it? Everybody's talking about it. Frankly, I'm not the techiest guy in the world, so I actually had to Google it this afternoon to find out more about what 5G, what is 5G. So I looked at Wikipedia, and here's what I found out that Wikipedia says. 5G, according to Wikipedia, is the latest generation of cellular communications targeting high data rates, reduced latency, energy savings, cost reductions, higher system capacity, and massive connectivity. There you go. A bunch of big words that may mean something to you, maybe not. But it does sound impressive, right? Who wouldn't want all of that? Well, some might ask, there's got to be a catch. So joining us now is our correspondent, Michelle Greenstein, with the latest on 5G. And I guess the question would be that, here's the setup, ba-dum-bum, is there a catch?
There is, just a small one. It might kill you.
Good to know.
So you'll find...
How so?
Well, a few days ago, actually, a group of scientists, doctors, environmental organizers, and concerned citizens got together and they called for the urgent stop to the deployment of 5G. They said that it's been proven harmful to human bodies, that this is an experiment on humanity, and that this should be called a crime under international law. Let's talk about today's technology, what we have going on today. Your phone is constantly sending electromagnetic fields in and out of each other. Whether or not you're receiving a notification right now, all of our digital tech sends this data back and forth, right, using these invisible microwave radiation signals, aka radio frequency radiation.
Right.
That's today's tech. We have every cell tower, every router constantly pulsing with radiation, whether or not you're using it. Science shows that this causes DNA damage, cancer, among other things. But don't take my word for it.
And that's just with 4G.
That's just with today's technology.
Before we get to 5G, right now you got some of it, but not that much.
Let's listen to what Dr. Sharon Goldberg has to say. She's a clinical researcher and an internal medicine physician. This is what she has to say about what we're using today.
Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects. Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects. Wireless radiation has biological effects, period. This is no longer a subject for debate when you look at PubMed and the peer-reviewed literature. These effects are seen in all life forms: plants, animals, insects, microbes. In humans, we have clear evidence of cancer now. There is no question. We have evidence of DNA damage, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor of congestive heart failure, neuropsychiatric effects.
So if 4G is already doing some of this, and I imagine if somebody walks around all day with their phone next to their head for hours upon end, they might be doing some damage to themselves. But let's get beyond 4G.
Right.
How much more potentially dangerous will 5G be, and why?
Well, here's what's really dangerous about 5G. I mean, it's being sold to us as super awesome. You know, your toaster can talk to your door lock. It can talk to your self-driving car. Like, you have a thermostat in your home that knows when you're home. You have these smart homes. Like, it just really sold to us as being awesome. But the downside is that with this rollout, it will be impossible to exist in a city or to walk outside without being exposed. There's going to be a cell tower in front of every few houses. And this means that your personal choices, whether or not you personally use a cell phone or hold it 10 inches away from your head, that cannot escape you from your radiation exposure. So let's listen to what Dr. David Carpenter, another public health physician and actually a signatory to this international appeal, had to say. I asked him about the safety testing that's been done with this 5G rollout.
Okay.
There's been no safety testing of 5G. The reason I think that it's dangerous is that there isn't any specific information to 5G, but we know that radio frequency radiation of 3G and 4G are associated with a whole variety of different human health effects. Everyone is going to be exposed to radio frequency radiation more continuously and at higher intensities, and that's going to cause more human disease. There's been no safety testing of 5G. The reason I think that it's dangerous is that there isn't any specific information to 5G, but we know that radio frequency radiation of 3G and 4G are associated with a whole variety of different human health effects. Everyone is going to be exposed to radio frequency radiation more continuously and at higher intensities, and that's going to cause more human disease.
Big brother or your dad, and you're being a little younger than me and probably have a little more awareness of this stuff, and I asked you,
Sure.
So when you described 5G, for those in the audience that maybe don't understand it, it's like this Alexa thing that's being sold to us. It's this thing in our homes where, as
On
you
all
said,
the time.
our toaster's talking to our phone and our phone is talking to...
The Internet of Things, right? I
So-
mean, if you go online and Google Internet of Things, it's just like utopian
Everything is
vision.
connected, right?
Everything, yeah. Sounds super amazing.
That's what 5G will eventually hope to become.
Exactly.
And you're saying it's too much. It's too omnipresent.
Well, I'm saying that there should at least be a public debate about the health effects. And the fact is, the government is completely not jumping on the ball. I mean, because of the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which says that no state or local government can regulate the placement of any cell towers regardless of environmental effects.
Right.
That has really laid, there it is right there, that has really laid the groundwork for this toxic infrastructure.
What is that we're looking at? I mean, I
This
hate
is the
just putting stuff up.
Telecommunications Act of 1996.
It's long. Why am I reading it?
This basically says that regardless of health effects, you cannot stop the deployment of 5G infrastructure. And the FCC, you know, which has no health expertise itself, is completely captured by the wireless industry. It's the same playbook that big oil used with climate change or big tobacco with cigarettes. You know, they're really deceiving the public and selling this to us as something that doesn't have a lot of risks. But you know who hasn't been fooled? The insurance companies. They are not selling any product liability policies that cover cell phone radiation because they aren't fooled by these studies. And look, when people like find reports, it is. When usually, like when you or I go online and find reports about wireless tech to find that it's harmless or that there's no evidence of harm, we're usually looking at industry-sponsored studies.
Yeah. And it's not a question about whether we don't want to move toward new technology. We just want to make sure that that new technology is tested before we put it out there.
Should know,
so good
correct.
stuff. Hey, Michelle, as usual, good stuff.
Thank you.
Good report.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.
So I'd like to begin by asking a few questions. Who has their smartphone in their pocket right now? And who's read the fine print in your owner's manual that says that the smartphone should never be within about an inch of the body?
Welcome everybody to the White House. This is White House 5G Summit.
5G is the next generation of wireless service.
5G is the future. T-Mobile will build a 5G network.
This site is ready for 5G. There is nothing that needs to be done to this equipment on the antenna system to be ready for 5G.
That's why together we're leading the 5G innovation charge.
The wireless industry is in a race to roll out 5G service. Now, 5G is supposed to be up to 100 times faster than current data speeds, but it requires cell phone tower equipment to be closer to users than ever before.
Most churches and most schools now have cell towers on them. And so it exposes the people around them and, of course, the students who go to those schools. This is a cell tower in San Francisco. That brown thimble on top of the telephone pole is a cell tower. And these are being placed every couple blocks. A company can come and put a cell tower right outside your window. So this is something that's happening throughout the Bay Area, and it's going to be happening throughout the United States.
Is there a catch?
There is, just a small one. It might kill you. So you'll find.
How so?
Well, a few days ago, actually, a group of scientists, doctors, environmental organizers, and concerned citizens got together and they called for the urgent stop to the deployment of 5G. They said that it's been proven harmful to human bodies, that this is an experiment on humanity, and that this should be called a crime under international law.
This stuff is untested on kids. Their safety is not certain.
These untested technologies are, at this time, not ready to be unleashed into our lives.
5G can be a tremendous boom to California, but only if it can be put up quickly and easily. I know scientifically that putting up these cell phone towers is safe.
But the International Association of Firefighters disagrees.
Because what the science shows is that we're all affected on some level. Every cell in our body communicates using tiny electric signals. It's how our nervous system operates. So to think that we could put an exponential amount of microwave radiation into our environment and not feel effects is simply false.
They began opposing cell towers on fire stations after firefighters complained of health problems.
These firefighters developed symptoms, and the symptoms included problem with memory, problem with intermittent confusion, problem with weakness.
Hoyser says their brain scans suggest even low-level RF can cause cell damage, and he worries about more vulnerable groups like kids.
But tonight, Julie Watts asked the question you're not supposed to ask.
Are there legitimate health concerns?
As it's being rolled out worldwide without safety testing. Let me say that again, without safety testing. And how we've got scientists and doctors and environmental organizers saying, stop this. Because in terms of the effects of wireless radiation, the science is in. Wireless radiation can lead to cancerous heart tumors, brain tumors, DNA damage. Wireless radiation is linked to infertility, to autism, Alzheimer's.
What we have is the industry clearly lying to public representatives, which should outrage you enough that you stop the process. And what you need to understand is no wireless device, and 5G included, is safety tested before it's put on market. We have video from the FCC proceedings with one of the 5G engineers saying themselves, look, we are forcing these directed beams into people's windows at levels that we do not allow in our labs, in our safety labs.
But get this, wireless companies in the U.S. say they'll have to install about 300,000 new antennas for the rollout of 5G. That is roughly equal to the total number of cell phone towers built over the past 3 decades.
We won't stop.
Tiny wavelengths, much shorter than the ones the current 4G networks work on. That means cell towers or receptors will need to be much closer.
It's not just headaches and insomnia. It's much more serious things, such as infertility, DNA damage, and eventually cancer.
One of the most shocking things that I found thus far in all the inspections that I've performed for people so far. And here we are on the roof of an architecture firm in this beautiful space that this person lives in. I'm going to show you the first thing right here. Stay back. Radio frequency energy may exceed exposure limits. This person just found out recently that they have cancer, and they've actually been helping their son for the last year or so, who's 25, who also has cancer. And I'm going to show you what is behind this building, and I'm really, really shocked. So here we go. Here's this door, and we're gonna just step in here very briefly because it's really intense in here. So this is cell phone towers.
Look at that. It's unbelievable. And again, I'll show you the meter. Sitting here right outside these people's driveway. Now this is also extremely hard to believe. I've now driven down almost a full block, right next to the telephone pole, down a full block, and check this out. I'm going to show you the meter reading, and the meter is still up at 2 and 3 volts per meter in the red on the left-hand side at the peak.
Benjamin Rivas has worked on cell phone towers for 14 years.
Physically burned my hand.
The burn is a work injury you can see.
What you see here is what I would call an everyday crime.
Other problems he said caused by the towers aren't as easy to spot.
Depression, and I get headaches from time to time, and mood swings and stuff.
Here's what I consider, in my personal opinion, another crime scene. And I don't think I'm being dramatic saying this. Here's the cell phone tower. I want you to notice where this is located. Literally in the parking lot, right next to these stores. There's human beings working in these stores and eating in these restaurants all day long, and there's a cell phone tower right there. That's hitting 1,000 microwatts per square meter, depending on the pulses that are coming off the tower. I'm across the street, as you can see. I wouldn't even want to guess what the radiation exposure is inside of those stores there. And I have the meter set on average, which you can see here it says RMS, which means microwatts per square meter average power density. It's 800, 900 microwatts per square meter. Goes even higher. Once again, biological effects start at 3.4 to 6 microwatts per square meter average power density.
52-year-old Sanjay Kasliwal is counting the days now. Incurable brain cancer due to radiation from mobile phone towers in his neighborhood has reduced life to little more. His brother has been termed luckier, sent to the US for brain surgery, but both of them know hope fades.
I have written to all possible government offices to find out what sort of control are they doing or what sort of an audit is being done, and it seems everything falls on deaf ears. Nobody is concerned.
Experts say the area the two men live in faces radiation from mobile phone towers equivalent to living in a microwave oven 19 minutes a day.
See, the levels were somewhere between -18 to -20 to 20 dBm also over here, and the radiation levels are very high for prolonged exposure, almost about 100 times higher than what is recommended for continuous safe exposure. And there are 2 cancer cases which have been reported in this house. There's even a dog has got cancer.
It's kind of interesting when cell phone tower workers are telling you that they have headaches, that they have brain cancer, that they have all these health issues throughout the day, where they get these headaches or blurry vision. Why would so many of these guys have these seemingly often problems like this? You would think that if there was nothing really bad about cell phone towers, that obviously those who would work on these towers would be fine. But instead you hear something quite different. And with the readouts with this, 1,000 plus microwatts per square meter measured near one of these cell phone towers, when it only takes about 10 microwatts to even have any effect on you. So we're talking 100 times the threshold for where it actually can cause harm to a person. So it's very interesting. Some people have mentioned that when they've lived near cell phone towers that they've had headaches and depression, and this is also something that these tower workers have mentioned as well, having even depression from doing this. So this also begs the question of whether or not these patents I've shown in a previous video really are something that is being used on some of these towers to where it can actually influence you. These frequencies that they use can cause certain types of emotions and certain types of feelings. At certain frequencies it makes you even potentially depressed feeling, and in other frequencies it can cause you to even become enraged. And why is there so many cell phone towers? And in many cases these cell phone towers, if you put your cell phone directly towards them in the range and it doesn't do anything. You go look up the cell phone tower online, it says it's for this certain particular company, let's say Sprint. You go and take your phone over to it and you have no bars. It doesn't even make any sense. Or even have some of these cell phone towers multiples in a row. Why would you have so many in a row? What's the relevance of that? It's supposed to be covering certain square footage, allegedly, but instead we have them lined up near a highway. Why would they be doing that? Especially not very far apart. So it makes you kind of wonder what they're really for here.
To broadcast the entire Earth, it takes 2 kilowatts, 2 hair dryers. Now a microwave oven uses 1,000 watts or 1 kilowatt. Here's the damage 1 kilowatt can be done by somebody when they take a magnetron out of a microwave and turn it into a ray gun. This is just a small example of a low-tech weapon running on 1,000 watts. Then you have these things here, these huge towers of death. Now each row in this tower, an array, or a set of dishes or rectennas or whatever you want to call them, is connected to a cable with a maximum power output of 300,000 watts, or 300 kilowatts. That's 300 microwave ovens. We based that conservative estimate based on the gauge of the cabling that's running up to one of these arrays. They're estimated at 300,000 watts per cable. Those aren't fiber optic cables running up to those arrays. It's a thick copper gauge transmission line quality cable running up those towers. Now, if there's 10 cables, that's like 3 megawatts of power. And these cables are out there to output power to the magnetron, not for data transfer. That's an important point. These cell phone towers are weaponized. There's no other reason to have this much power running up the cables. It isn't for data transfer. Now, FCC regulations limit normal transmission per array to about 400 watts. To put that into perspective, 1 watt from your phone can go 25 miles to the nearest tower. A 1,000 watt magnetron on a stick can blow shit up. And these towers have a 300 kilowatt power line running up to each rectenna. And who knows, there could be an amplifier at the top of these towers that steps up the power even more. The point is here, ladies and gentlemen, is that these companies like Lucent and Google could turn up the juice at any time and nuke a town. They could nuke the entire country without any warning, without anybody being able to protect themselves.
Now here at America Trends, we talk about what you're talking about on your social media. Our producers spend hours each day not reading the old fake news headlines. You are our incredible reporters, so I want to get right back to it. John McCain recently diagnosed with a brain tumor, as you know, and we see other prominent figures in America like former Vice President Beau Biden, son of former Vice President Beau Biden, who, as you know, died of brain cancer. But it's not just politicians. It happens to people across the country, and some studies have shown a link between brain cancer and cell phone use. So I wondered, when I saw what had happened with John McCain, if it could have anything to do with that. So I called in the expert here with me now to discuss California Brain Tumor Association and We Are the Evidence, bioinitiative.org, Kevin Modis. Kevin, the John McCain, is it any coincidence? Is there any way it's coincidence that the scar he has is like right here, and this is all happening right here, and that happens to be right where you put a cell phone?
Yeah, just like you said, Gina, the scar is right down his face, exactly where you would hold your cell phone. And you need to understand, he had a glioblastoma. And while the wireless industry says there's no increase in brain tumors, so there's no problem with cell phones, the reality is there's a significant increase in glioblastomas. Unfortunately, they're very, very deadly. So
whether curing some sorts of brain cancer, they can come up with these statistics that say there's no increase in brain cancer, when you're saying there has been a dramatic increase in the one specifically related to cell phone radiation.
Yeah, and the glioblastomas have been related to cell phone use by a scientist and medical doctor, Leonard Hardell, and people can go to his blog, Hardell blog, and he's one of the leading scientists, has a group that has been doing research for a long time and has significantly shown a relationship between cell phone use and these GBMs, or glioblastomas. The other thing is the wireless industry says there hasn't been any increase in brain tumors, and for the overall head, there hasn't been an increase. But in the 3 areas of the brain that get the most cell phone radiation, okay, your frontal lobe, your temporal lobe, and your cerebellum, the increase is significant in a study that was done by USC all the way up for the 15 years before 2006. Now that's up to 2006. Now think about how much people have been using wireless since 2006.
Yeah, and your Bluetooth doesn't change this, right?
No, it doesn't, because it still transmits to the cell phone.
As much?
Not as much, but you still have a transmitter in your ear. And as one technician said, why don't you explain to him, your ear is a hole in your head, and those microwaves go right into your head.
So I don't really like to talk on my phone, and the reason is because I get a headache when I talk on my phone. And people get really frustrated with me that I almost refuse to talk on my cell phone. Unless it's an emergency with one of my children, I pretty much don't do it. And if I do it, I will use the speaker function. Am I safe?
Well, you're not safe, and you're a great example of neurological effects from wireless radiation. The same kind of neurological effects, the FCC, don't exist. And this is the big problem. The FCC regulates wireless radiation human exposure levels. And the fact is, the FCC has no one qualified to assess safety for us. Yet they're saying it's safe, and they've set a standard that's too high. It's a thermal standard. Thermal and above. If it doesn't heat you or burn you, it doesn't hurt you. And as you know, your phone doesn't heat or burn you, but yet you still have biological effects. People are getting neurological effects. People are getting cancer from wireless radiation. People are getting immune system problems, and fertility is affected, basically affecting all systems of the body. And people just go to that website you talked about, bioinitiative.org. This looks at 3,600 studies and breaks it down by different sections of the body and shows you there's definitely evidence that wireless radiation is very, very harmful and should be minimized rather than maximized, which the FCC is doing in concert with the wireless industry and their lobby group, CTIA.
But it's actually scarier than that, because even if you're not using a cell phone at all, they're putting towers up all over the country without your permission. You used to have to sign something, and you saw those little green tree-looking things that were cell towers, you know, and if they were going to put them within a certain radius of your house, you had to sign off of them. Not the case anymore. Tell us.
Yeah, so there's a new wireless technology, 5G. So right now we're at a lower frequency, like 1 to 3 gigahertz. This is now 24 to 90 gigahertz. Just to put that in perspective, 90 gigahertz is 90 billion electromagnetic waves per second hitting and going through your cells every second. That is far from natural. Your heart has a circuit, has electricity to it. Your brain has electricity to it. It's about 8 to 10 hertz. This is billions of times more than what's natural. And 5G is being forced on us. In California, SB 649 is going to make it so they can put one of these transmitters in front of your house. And 5G doesn't travel very well because it's very dense. And so they have to put a transmitter about every 2 to 10 homes. And they're not going to ask you about it. They're just going to put it in front of you, exempt from any health, safety, or environmental review.
On streetlights.
On streetlights, on poles in front of your house, on any kind of fixture that can get what they want. And it's not going to be your choice. There's not going to be any consent. And I got to tell you, it's not a very Republican thing to do. It's not a very American thing to do. And these bills are stripping away your constitutional rights to protect yourself and your families. But this goes way back. The 1996 Telecommunications Act that was passed in 1996 by Bill Clinton had Section 704 that banned by law looking at health and safety when they put cell towers in. This is how they built out the whole network. They've known about health effects for decades.
This is Orwellian.
Absolutely. It's a concerted, concentrated effort to hide wireless radiation health effects. And it's absolutely time it stops. 5G is, we're looking at a worst case scenario. High frequency, high intensity wireless in front of your home, in close proximity, continuously. What's interesting is the Army, and people should look this up. Look up the active denial system. The active denial system. The military is using these frequencies at 95 gigahertz. And remember, they're talking about 24 to 90 gigahertz for this as a biological weapon for crowd control. So on the one hand, the FCC is saying it's completely harmless. On the other hand, the military is using it as a biological weapon. Somebody's lying. And what's interesting for your audience to look at is their own insurance policy. Look at your homeowner's insurance. Look in the back under general exclusions. You'll see asbestos isn't covered by insurance. Earthquakes aren't covered by insurance. Fires aren't covered by some insurance. And then you'll see electromagnetic radiation or electromagnetic waves, the kind of emitted from wireless technology. So the industry, the insurance industry that is given the mandate to assess risk has assessed it as a high-risk agent and says they won't cover biological effects from wireless radiation, yet they're putting the exact same thing near your home, next to your head, in your schools, and it's absolutely wrong. It's time we do something. The industry is now pushing it with Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and he's now said, I'm going to speed up the siting of these small cell transmitters. He's met with AT&T and Verizon and all those. AT&T invested $16 million in lobbying last year. We don't have the kind of resources to get a meeting. One of the reasons I came to meet with you was to say to you, please help me get a meeting with President Trump. I believe he has the guts and the courage, and he cares enough about the average person to say no to these transmitters and say yes to making this technology safer.
If we can get the word out to him.
If we can meet with him.
Yeah. Well, you have taken this so seriously that you've literally dedicated your life to this. This is your life's work. But aside from meeting with the president, which of course has to be a goal if we're going to change policy, I know you've also met with many legislators. How can we, the average citizen, be the most effective? Because honestly, the information is overwhelming.
Okay. So half the states now have these bills called the Wireless Telecommunications Facilities Act, designed on a state level to strip your rights away and put these little cell transmitters in front of your house. By the way, they're not so little. They can be as large as a refrigerator with a power source included. People need to get politically active. It's time to get off the couch. It's time to...
My name is Chuck Groddens with Computer Care Clinic. One of the most frequent questions we get here in our service is, How can I resolve my Wi-Fi troubleshooting problems? People lose signal or a device stops connecting. So I decided in order to answer that question with any authority, I needed to look a little bit further into this whole Wi-Fi thing. What is it? How does it work? What type of signals are being broadcast? Are they directional? How much power do you need? And then I thought about it as I was doing this research. Well, what are the effects of these things, these Wi-Fi transmitters? What type of radio frequencies do they use? How much power do they need? And where are they? And how are they affecting us, if in any way at all? So this video is going to be a little bit longer than our usual tip of the day, but it's going to explore Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi signals, and we'll dig into a little bit of radio frequency too, just in case you forgot or you were sleeping during your physics classes in high school. So let's dig into Wi-Fi, find out the myths and the truths, and hopefully we'll have a better idea and handle on how to troubleshoot our Wi-Fi problems.
Let's first look in an oversimplified view of the electromagnetic field, or E.M.F. radiation spectrum. E.M.F. radiation can be classified from very low frequency, which has a long wavelength, to very high frequency, which has a short wavelength. The sound waves humans can hear are a form of very low frequency E.M.F. radiation, with one single electromagnetic wave cycle or wavelength longer than a football field. On the high frequency end, you can find things like X-rays and gamma rays with a wavelength smaller than an atom. Radio waves and microwaves are forms of electromagnetic energy that are collectively described by the term radio frequency, or RF. RF emissions are discussed in terms of energy, radiation, or fields. Radiation is defined as energy traveling through the air in the form of waves or particles. Electromagnetic radiation can be described as waves of electric and magnetic energy moving together or radiating through space. These radiation waves are generated by the movement of electrical charges through a conductive metal object, like an antenna. For example, the movement of energy in a radio or television or cellular base station antenna generates electromagnetic waves that radiate away from the antenna and are eventually intercepted by a receiving antenna, such as your rooftop TV antenna, a car radio antenna, or an antenna integrated into a handheld device, such as a cellular telephone. Frequency is the number of electromagnetic waves passing any given point in 1 second. For example, a typical radio wave transmitted by your favorite FM radio station has a wavelength of about 10 feet or 3 meters and a frequency of about 100 million cycles or waves per second, known as 100 megahertz. So your favorite FM radio station sends about 100 million 10-foot-long RF electromagnetic waves into the air every second. That's a lot of waves. Telecommunication services cannot exist without E.M.F. Microwave ovens, commercial heating, manufacturing, diagnostic medical services, some medical techniques, and radar are also uses of RF energy. There's also natural RF produced by Earth and space. So we're surrounded by radiation. E.M.F. radiation is classified as non-ionizing or ionizing. Ionizing E.M.F. radiation, like certain UV rays and X-rays, can break chemical bonds, which is not great. That means they can cause cell damage in living things, which is obviously bad for us. RF radiation, as found in radio, TV, cell phone, and Wi-Fi transmissions, is considered non-ionizing. Some sort of E.M.F. radiation is emitted by all technical equipment or devices that produce electromagnetic fields. It's basically anything that gets plugged in or runs on a battery. Power lines, radar systems, communication towers, cell phones, cordless phones, Wi-Fi routers, iPads, TVs, computers, gaming consoles. They all produce some sort of E.M.F. radiation. Well, here's where it gets interesting. All E.M.F. radiation has an effect on the human body. But the question is whether it's a negligible effect or a negative effect, and to what degree. Microwaves are a specific category of radio waves. They can be defined as radio frequency radiation with frequencies from several hundred megahertz to several gigahertz, or thousands of megahertz. One of the most familiar and widespread uses of microwave energy is found in household microwave ovens, which operate at a frequency of about 2,450 megahertz, or 2.45 gigahertz. Sound familiar? That's right. Almost the same frequency your microwave oven uses to heat your food is also used for most cordless phones and Wi-Fi routers. Technically, Wi-Fi channels typically range from 2.412 gigahertz to about 2.472 gigahertz, right in that spectrum. So you might think, aha, that's where my Wi-Fi interference is coming from, my microwave oven. But not so fast. Most microwave ovens are well shielded and will not emit enough radiation to interfere with wireless communications even when they're on. If your microwave is, say, very old or was dropped or damaged in a move, it might have a damaged shield. To be safe, it's probably a good idea to replace it. If you have doubts about your wireless equipment and interference, you could upgrade that wireless networking equipment and your cordless phone devices to the newer 5 gigahertz band, which is way above the 2.4, as long as your wireless devices all support it. Research continues on the possible effects of exposure to RF and microwave radiation. 2.4 gigahertz, as we learned, is far from ionizing radiation, the type that can quickly harm human tissue and cause bad things like cancer. But you can't see or feel any radiation. And what's scary is the long-term effects of exposure to radiation might not appear for several months or even years. It's widely thought the principal effect of non-ionizing radiation, like microwaves, is an increase in the temperature of water in our bodies. Theoretically, it would take an unlikely amount of microwave energy to cause harm to a human body. But as scientists are beginning to study the effects more closely, some people are beginning to change their minds. In 2011, the WHO International Agency for Research on Cancer classified radio frequency electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic to humans, based on an increased risk for glioma, a malignant type of brain cancer associated with wireless phone use. You probably heard about that in the news. Also, 2 areas of the body, the eyes and the testes, are known to be particularly vulnerable to heating by RF energy because of the relative lack of available blood flow to dissipate the excessive heat. Laboratory experiments have shown that 30 minutes to 1 hour of considerably high levels of RF radiation, now we're talking 100 to 200 milliwatts per centimeter squared, which is a tremendous amount of energy, can cause cataracts in rabbits. Temporary sterility caused by such effects as changes in sperm count and in sperm mobility is possible after exposures of the testes to high-level RF radiation. So if you're thinking about having children, fellas, you might want to remove that cell phone from your front pocket. The good news is that typical environmental levels of RF energy routinely encountered by the general public are far below levels necessary to produce significant heating and increased body temperature. But there may be situations, particularly workplace environments near high-powered RF sources, where recommended limits for safe exposure of human beings to RF energy could be exceeded. More recently, other scientific laboratories in North America, Europe, and elsewhere have reported certain biological effects after exposure of animals and animal tissue to relatively low levels of RF radiation. These reported effects have included certain changes in the immune system, neurological effects, behavioral effects, evidence for a link between microwave exposure and the action of certain drugs and compounds, an effect in brain tissue, and effects on DNA. Some studies have also examined the possibility of a link between RF and microwave exposure and cancer. Results to date have been inconclusive. Microwave exposure, when you think about it, is fairly new, but it's growing quickly. Dr. Magda Havas makes some great points regarding our lack of experience with the effects of non-ionizing radiation since it's relatively recent. Cell phones have been around for nearly 30 years, but only becoming widespread in the last 10 since smartphones took off. Wi-Fi has been a thing for nearly 15 years now, growing slowly, but now it's everywhere. And smart meters installed by your local electric company have been transmitting pulses of pretty concerning power for about 5 years, causing a lot of people to take notice. It takes quite a while to formulate a statistically significant health finding, and up to now, there's not a whole lot of evidence or research. Also, Dr. Magdas notes that human exposure to radiation used to be intermittent, but now it's more constant than ever. Wi-Fi routers emit a beacon signal that is continuous as long as the device is powered on. In other words, you don't have to be connected to the internet to be exposed to the radiation generated by a wireless router. When information is either uploaded or downloaded, the radiation levels increase both at the router and at the computer. The same is true for cordless phones and wireless baby monitors. Voice-activated baby monitors and cordless phones that radiate only when in use are available in Europe, but not currently available widely in North America. Now, some people are more sensitive to E.M.F. than others, suffering from a recently discovered affliction known as electronic hypersensitivity. They used to just think these people are crazy, but now they're finding that symptoms including unexplained fatigue, sleep disturbances, headaches, feeling of discomfort, difficulty concentrating, depression, memory loss, visual disruptions, irritability, hearing disruptions, ringing in the ears, skin problems, heart palpitations, and irregular heartbeat, dizziness, loss of appetite, movement difficulties, and nausea may all be symptoms of electronic hypersensitivity. When electrically hypersensitive people go into an electromagnetically clean environment, many of their symptoms seem to diminish or disappear. Studies predict by 2017, almost 50% of the population may be complaining of this illness. Some countries are already withdrawing Wi-Fi from public areas and even creating radiation-free refuges for people with electrosensitivity. The bottom line on RF radiation and its effect on us? Well, the jury is still out, but it's not looking great. In the meantime, until we all know for sure, it might be prudent to take a few precautionary steps. Fortunately, it's pretty easy to avoid most microwave radiation in high doses. Move wireless routers and cell phones further away from people. The further they are away, the less RF you'll absorb. Use headphones or the speakerphone when you talk on your phone to keep it away from your brain. Don't sleep with your cell phone under your pillow. Don't put your cell phone in your pockets. And turn things off when you're not using them. Unplug your Wi-Fi router and turn off your phone if you absolutely don't need it at night. So what levels of RF radiation are considered safe, and what kinds of levels are typical? We did some of our own testing with an X-Tech 480836 E.M.F meter in a typical home and office scenario, and here's what we found. So we took some readings at our store and at our home. First we started at our store, sorry for the messy workshop back here, and we got close to the wireless router and found that we had some spikes up to 0.6 microwatts per cubic centimeter, which is pretty high. So the question is, we still don't know what this stuff is doing to us, but there's some pretty cool charts at bioinitiative.org citing scientific studies that have already happened, and they have lots of easy-to-read, colorful charts with the potential effects of electromagnetic radiation in the human body. Again, these are proven to be long-term studies. Stuff's still kind of new. This is interesting, too. If you look at these smart meters that everybody's fussing about, I didn't think it was such a big deal until I took the readings myself, and looking at a peak of 37.28. And that's pretty heavy. I mean, that's a lot of power. Now, it's pulsed energy. It's not constant. But this might be hitting you in your bedroom or your place of work, depending on the location of this thing. And, of course, I'm right on top of it here. But if you look at it, you get immune system effects at that type of radiation. So you need to be concerned, if nothing else. We don't know if it's causing any cancer or immune system effects with a pulsed rate like that. Your body does a really good job of healing itself. Also, the microwave ovens, if you get really close, nobody would do this, would stand in front of a microwave oven, but there's considerable amount of energy coming out of a microwave oven. And you're looking at some of the effects that could here, including altered cell membranes. Of course, you wouldn't stand in front of a microwave oven. Most people have more sense than that. Although there is shielding inside, if you get right up on it, there are still some waves, microwaves, that do escape that shielding. So you want to make sure you're backed out. And you see if I pull away and even leave the room, it gets back to more of a background radiation. Again, this is in our store. We've got Wi-Fi waves and microwaves flying all over the place in here. Now, this is just my laptop, and you can see as it's sending and receiving information, it's jacked up to about 0.2, 0.3, and you can see that there are some possible neurological effects, and that's constant. That's what we're probably doing sitting at our desks every day or at home, and even having these laptops on our laps, for the gentlemen especially, it could affect sterility. So if you're having a problem having kids, you might want to double check your electronic devices. Now, my wife was on a phone call, and look at this, spiking at 7 microwatts per cubic centimeter. And it's huge. I mean, it doesn't do it all the time. We have a pretty crappy signal. We have Verizon in our house, and unfortunately, we're a little far off the beaten path. So I understand the further are you away, the more energy your phone has to use to acquire that signal. As I pull this away from her cell phone while she's on an active call, and this doesn't happen all the time, just when you're on a telephone call, and it's a little less for Wi-Fi, you can see that it gets kind of jacked up periodically. Not all the time, but I mean, these are significant numbers here, this 3 and 4, and you can see on the chart here what this does, even up to 7. And again, this is more constant than the pulsed energy we're looking at. So if you spend a lot of time on the phone, you might have some questions about what is this stuff doing? It's a relatively new phenomenon, only the last decade or so, so we don't have a whole lot of information. We are the guinea pigs, my friends, so take some precautions and just be careful. It's better to be safe than be sorry. My name is Chuck Fresh. Please like and subscribe and tell your friends about this video too. Hey, we might all learn something if we put our heads together, and put your findings in the comments below, please. We'd like to know what you're experiencing with microwave and RF frequency radiation. Thanks again for watching.